Hi, welcome audience. Welcome to Profile. This is Arif Malik. I'm your host today. Profile, as you understand, we bring few of the achievers, few of those who, in fact, tread a different track. Those people, in fact, who make an impression, who leave their footprints and fingerprints on things happening around us. Today, we have two amazing guests with us. And today's topic is Rendezvous with Pakistan. Pakistan is one of the most misperceived country around the world. Whenever they make different indexes, they usually put Pakistan in the top 10, and most of that is for the wrong reasons. However, interesting bit is that there are people who, in fact, endeavor to discover Pakistan beyond the headlines, beyond what is a breaking news. So these two people, they are established, they are success stories in their own right in their respective fields. I'll be introducing you to Vanessa O'Brien and Cynthia Ritchie. Welcome to the Profile.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Pakistan.
Thank you.
Yesterday, in fact, there was a Congress, which is Women Achievers Congress. This was an international Women Achievers Congress, which was organized by World Congress of Overseas Pakistanis in London, the first one ever. Cynthia and Vanessa both were invited to the Congress, in fact, to share their fascinating stories. Now, I'm going to ask one intriguing question to both of you. Somehow you have 5 years long experience dealing with Pakistan, and you have your short stint, but what are those 3 to 5 habits of Pakistanis which you believe you got inspired, or you fall in love with, or something that you truly appreciate? There could be lots of annoying habits. That's something.
Well, that's true with every culture and every community, right?
So let's only know those which
focus on the positive.
Which an alien would pick up coming to the country for the first time. So, why
don't we collaborate on this?
Sure.
True.
Okay, so definitely hospitality.
Certainly.
I mean, I would say, unlike any culture, and both she and I have traveled extensively around the world, there's no doubt when you enter Pakistan, and even this extends almost the further you go from a major city, the more hospitable, the people become. Mm-hmm. Cynthia has some great stories going outside the big cities, but Islamabad and Skardu, if people had very little, they were more and more welcoming to give you, the cup of tea and, open their homes and, welcome you.
Fascinating. Coming from a Guinness Book of World Record holder, could we say Pakistan is the most hospitable country in the world?
I mean, just really, newfound friends.
It's in that top 10 list.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's still wonderful.
Unbelievable. And I had things happen to me, that if I had built a risk assessment list, I wouldn't have put having a tooth fall out, things like that happened to me, on day one, and having to find a dentist and all of that. So, the people that during Ramadan, right, when, their shops aren't open, workplaces aren't open, and people opened their doors and took care of me and made sure I was fit for purpose to go on my way, and looked after me on the Karakoram Highway and places, that, maybe weren't the safest to travel. And, I just found people were, very protective, just really opened their doors and really looked after me.
Excellent. Cynthia?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I echo Vanessa's sentiments, absolutely. One of the stories that I'd sort of like to share is that my mother, who is a true Southern belle from Louisiana and has never been anywhere outside the United States, of course, was a little bit worried when I first visited Pakistan. And then when we had a Skype call after me being there for my first couple of weeks, she got to see my torso, my upper body, and She said, "Oh, Cynthia, well, it looks like you've put on some weight." And I said, "Well, probably, Mother. Everywhere I go, the Pakistanis feed me." And she goes, "Oh, thank God. If they're feeding you, they're taking care of you." You know, and I thought, what in the world? You know, I'm the world traveler here. And it was just such a revelation for me. My mother, who is a nurse, has a very simple life, goes to work, has her friends and family, very close-knit, but stays close to home. My mother, who's never traveled anywhere, saw something amazing, and through that culinary connectivity, I like to say, she put that together, and I thought, how fascinating is this? You know, my mother all of a sudden was no longer worried that I was in Pakistan because she said, if they're feeding you, they're taking care of you. Yeah. You know, and that was very similar to if you were to visit my mother's home, you're going to have tea and you're going to be fed whether you like it or not. You know, so I saw at that point, I really got to see so much more in common. The further I traveled, the more I thought, this is really just like being at home. Indeed. You know, with the food and the hospitality, being a Southern woman from the United States. But also, too, I think I have to say, it is the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. And I, as a Westerner, as a Christian, as a woman, I was raised to be respectful and mindful of all faiths. And so I wanted to learn a little bit more about Islam as I was journeying through Pakistan. And so I visited... spoke with a number of imams, and we went to a number of mosques and so forth. And what I came to learn was that within the tenets of Islam, that it was their duty to look after the guests and those who were invited, to protect them and to care for them. And within that knowledge, I became even more comfortable that these were basically extensions of my family. These are my brothers and my sisters, and that we had so much more in common than differences.
Excellent. So the more we are different, the more we're same from that angle. So finding similarities. So Vanessa, what else?
You know, it's a little harder to describe, but the Pakistanis have a very funny sense of humor that I find adorable. And here you have to get to know them better.
Indeed.
And a sense of playfulness and fun as well. And, you know, I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it with the Pakistani, high-altitude porters, you know, where we have down days and we'll just be sitting on the glacier waiting for something, trying to acclimatize. And there's nothing to do. Nothing to do. Everything's packed. There's nothing going on. And, you know, they'll line up some rocks and take a rock and try to knock down rocks, you know, and then everybody will take their turn and, you know, we'll create little games to play. And, you know, it's just kind of that sense of, you know, who can do it and who can take the rock and who can knock it down. You know, yesterday at the conference, you know, at the women's conference, there was the barrister who was saying, well, you know, have things changed for women? And she said, well, it doesn't really matter. As a barrister, I still have to put on a wig and, you know, a cloak or something. And that just made me laugh. You know, it didn't really matter because her profession still required her to put on some stuff. And then I just think, you know, back to, you know, a great old BuzzFeed clip that, you know, showed Homeland as a DVD series, and one of the Pakistani comedians taking that apart and saying, you know, I'm sorry, you know, we are Indo-Aryan, we are not Arabs. And did you really have to hire Arab actors, you know, and you know, don't you have professors like, you know, at Princeton and Yale that can like tell you this stuff, that help consult with Hollywood? Like, you know, he was just outraged, and, you know, and that's not what happens to bulletproof glass when it shatters. Let me show you what happens, and, you know.
So Vanessa, you couldn't go to Lahore, but Lahore is considered the cultural capital of the country. At the same time, Lahoris are famous for their sense of humor. You might be surprised that in the last 10 years, when Pakistan is going through one of the most turbulent periods due to the extremism and radicalism, there are scores of jokes on suicide bombers.
Oh, wow.
Right? So this also shows kind of resilience, in fact. A nation which could laugh at itself, in fact. Yeah. There are great jokes on politicians, and at the same time, great jokes on Maulvis, the vicars, in fact.
Yep.
which is something you don't expect looking at the kind of cultural, religious aspect. Then it is, even as you mentioned, suicide bombers, like those people, which is a heinous act itself. But this is the resilience, in fact, which probably got the nation going through all these last 10, 15 years. So, Cynthia, what do you feel about it?
It's funny that you say Malvis, because when I was in Peshawar, we were visiting with a few Malvis, and of course, there were a number of bearded gentlemen with us, and I just interacted with them like I'm interacting with you, and one of them out of the blue, in the middle of Peshawar, in a long shalwar kameez, down to his ankles, said, "Cynthia, we want peace, but not in pieces."
Wow.
And I thought, oh, that's profound. Should I laugh? And then he started laughing. So when you say that sense of humor, I think that was really quite amazing, because it was such a sensitive time. And me being an American over there, while that's taking place, I thought, well, this is really serious stuff, and how do we mitigate this in a respectful, mindful way? But at the same time, I'm over there as a private citizen, and being able to interact with the locals there was really quite cathartic, I think, for both of us, because they got to interact with a U.S. citizen in ways that they typically don't. And they got to see me from a different perspective, and likewise, myself with them. So,
excellent. So what else? In terms of something that's really inspirational, something that culturally specific to Pakistan, which you noticed. One more to share.
I can give the example of when I was touring an IDP camp. When I had a lot of security. The federal and provincial security was with me for this tour, and with the internally displaced persons, I encountered this elderly woman who had lost her entire family in the floods. And this was a few years ago. This was just one of many stories. But because this was one of my first, this has always really stuck with me. And she had nothing but a blue UNHCR tarp for her tent or her home, and about 8 to 10 bricks for a makeshift brick oven, and a pile of belongings in the corner. And this woman had nothing. And she fought her way through security to meet with me. And when I saw these people's faces, I politely and as respectfully as I could told my security, I don't need you to keep this bubble around me. These people are not going to harm me. Look what they're dealing with. So I had to ask my security just to sort of dissipate. And this one elderly woman made herself to me, and I remember she just put her hands on my face and kissed my forehead, and then wanted me to sit with her and have tea. And she shared with me some of the biscuits that were passed out as provisions. And I thought she had nothing, but what little she had, she wanted to share with me.
The real country, the real people, the real culture, and something which is a figment of imagination. So how do you both look at the homeland and the true country itself?
So I've never actually seen the series, although I did download it. Ultimately, it's not a joking matter, because if you're not educated, it can play badly in the Western media. Because like we were talking about yesterday at the conference with the Congress, the Western media does portray countries like Pakistan in a poor light. And if that's the only information that Westerners get about that country, and it's not just the press now, it can be entertainment in Hollywood,
indeed,
like a series like Homeland, then suddenly you think, oh my God, these are the bad guys.
Eureka, I found something fascinating.
So then it's like, we don't know anything about that country except these are the bad guys. We don't know anything about that country except Osama bin Laden was killed there. We don't know anything about that country except terrorism. And then they don't know anything except it ends in a stan. And Pakistan and Afghanistan, and then, Americans don't hear the first part. They just hear the last part. And all of a sudden, everything's grouped together. And they're all evil, right? It's an axis of evil, and it's in the Middle East. And then there's just, negligence and ignorance, and nobody takes another step to learn anything more. And I think it's important as ambassadors who've visited a country to try to differentiate. That's why I make the point of saying Indo-Aryan, not Arab. and to say, no, they speak Urdu, they don't speak Arabic. And, to really try to differentiate, and pull Pakistan out of what people think of when they think of the Middle East in however many different ways and shapes I can, so that Americans who are lazy sometimes in thoughts, and my British compatriots can start to differentiate where I am in the world and who I'm with.
Excellent. That's something, quite an endeavor, I think. It's a hard work to do, in fact, but
Yeah,
I must appreciate it because just most of us are lazy and would like to take things as they look like, as they are in the media or on the headline or in the breaking news or something are in James Bond's latest movie or whatever. So that or in Rambo, whatever. So how do you feel about it, Cynthia? What's your...
Well, no one, to build upon what we're talking about, lethargy, nobody wants to take the cognitive path, that's less traveled. It's easier to just sort of see something and, oh, someone's formulated an opinion for us, to absorb that as opposed to actually think critically for ourselves. And in terms of Homeland, it's intriguing, it's entertainment value, but if you rely upon Homeland for that being a reality series or a series based on so-called reality, then I bet you're watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians for foreign policy.
No, that's more realistic then.
And there you have it.
Why?